The Zorkan Dominion first detected the human fleet on the edge of a low-traffic sector. A collection of ships, drifting in formation, appeared on long-range sensors. The vessels gave off low heat signatures, slow drive emissions, and had no subspace communication. To the Dominion, this looked like nothing more than an outdated convoy or possibly a group of civilian mining vessels. The Dominion's analysts gave it a low-threat classification immediately. The humans, known to the Dominion only by archived reports, were a minor species from a distant spiral arm. Their progress in space travel had been slow. They had no known colonies outside their home system, and no established trading routes or embassies. Their ships lacked standard hull designs and bore mismatched markings. When Dominion Command reviewed the initial data, the decision was unanimous. These ships were not a threat. A review was held at the Central Command on Zorkatl. Fleet Intelligence presented a summary. The ships had irregular armor plating. No energy shielding. Their weapons appeared to be ballistic. Outdated. Crude. They lacked subspace engines and operated on older fusion drives. One Dominion strategist pointed out that the Terran vessels seemed to use basic analog targeting systems, which had not been seen in hundreds of cycles. The Dominion's war AI ran simulated battle scenarios. In every version, the human fleet was destroyed in under 10 minutes. Most versions showed no resistance at all. The analysis was accepted without challenge. Commander Zach Talon requested permission to intercept and eliminate the human group. He framed it as a chance for combat drills and tactical testing. The request was approved without delay. A warning broadcast was sent to the human fleet using automated subspace channels. The message informed them that they were in violation of Dominion space law and had 60 seconds to surrender their vessels. The message included standard translation protocols, but Dominion officers doubted the humans would even understand it. No response was expected. No response came. Talon ordered a second scan. The ships were now closer. The Dominion's high-resolution drones began a close inspection. What they found seemed to confirm all assumptions. The Terran vessels had inconsistent design elements. Some had visible rust. Others had signs of welded repairs. One ship carried what looked like repurposed industrial equipment mounted as weapons. The fleet was slow, silent, and did not attempt to hide. The Dominion's officers began to laugh. They made jokes about scavengers and backwater systems. Talon remarked that the humans had probably assembled these ships from scrap found in abandoned belts. A junior officer noted an unusual energy fluctuation within the fleet's formation, but it was dismissed as background interference. The war AI categorized the movement pattern of the human ships as disorganized and lacking coordination. A second and final warning message was sent, this time in simplified trade dialects. Again, no reply. The fleet held position. Then the human ships began to move. It was not a full advance or retreat. Instead, the vessels shifted slightly into new positions. Each ship drifted behind local objects, small asteroids, gas clouds, and even debris fields. The Dominion system flagged this as erratic and unplanned. But one of the tactical officers hesitated. He ran a quick calculation, then a second. He noted the angles. The ships were positioning themselves with intention. The officer spoke quietly at first, unsure. "They're not retreating," he said. "They're setting up lines of fire." Talon turned to him. "They're primitives. They don't have the tactics for this." The officer said nothing. Talon gave the order. The Dominion fleet advanced toward the human group. Formation was tight. Confidence was high. No one questioned the result. No one believed the humans could resist. But from that moment forward, the Dominion stopped making assumptions. The Terran fleet consisted of 16 ships. No two were identical. Their hulls bore signs of heavy use, scarring, mismatched plating, and reinforced sections bolted over old damage. Some had visible serial numbers scraped off, replaced with hand-painted insignias. Their propulsion systems ran hot, leaving behind ion trails brighter than standard military-grade drives. To any observer, they looked like an improvised defense force, not a trained fleet. But inside those vessels were crews that had been through wars humanity never recorded publicly. Veterans from orbital skirmishes, cyber wars, deep space sabotage operations, and civil conflicts that tore through the outer colonies. They came from fractured alliances, Earthbound superpowers, Martian separatists, Europa syndicates, but in this operation, they answered to one command, Admiral Ryder. No records showed Raid's full name or origin. Officially, there was no admiral in Terran Fleet Registry. No rank. Just a call sign. Ghost. Every order from the fleet ran through encrypted narrowband relays, untraceable to origin. Communication was minimal. The human ships didn't operate on centralized AI systems. Instead, each vessel was paired with a low-level learning core trained over years to respond to its own crew. These cores weren't just processors, they adapted to habits, language, and even tone. Each ship moved like a living extension of its crew, not a drone in a formation. To outside eyes, the humans lacked coordination. But internally, their fleet operated through autonomous synchronization. No need for constant updates. Pre-mapped fallback protocols were baked into each crew. Every pilot knew every other crew's response timing. These weren't standard military drills. They were habits formed through experience, mistakes, and survival. One frigate, the Ash Valor, was fitted with a grav sling rig that hadn't been used in over 70 years. It could launch projectiles using gravitational force instead of powered propulsion. The ship had no missile bay, no beam weapon, only magnetic rail assemblies powered by an overclocked reactor. The rest of the fleet had similar quirks: retrofitted mining lasers, chemical-based jammers, analog targeting systems. These ships weren't old because humanity lacked new ones. They were chosen because they couldn't be predicted by modern military AI. Inside the Revel, a long-range scout ship with no external weapons, the crew ran silent ops. It carried a suite of sensor disruptors, ECM bursts, and optical decoys. The Revel had been used in civilian espionage during the resource riots, but was reactivated for this mission. It wasn't built to fight directly. It was designed to make enemies fight each other. The only heavy ship, Carat 9, was a former mining vessel converted into a mobile shield platform. Its main body was reinforced with asteroid hull plating, and its primary function was to absorb hits and redirect reactor energy into wide-area pulses. In simulations, it never survived long, but in actual combat, it had been the reason smaller ships lived. Human crews didn't wait for centralized command. Each bridge operated on decentralization. Tactical decisions were made by consensus or lead officers with complete battlefield autonomy. The only unifying condition was silence. No fleet-wide comms. No visible data links. Each ship used tight beam signals pre-coded and randomized every hour. Dominion interception would be impossible. What the Zorkin failed to understand was that this fleet was not built to match their strength. It was built to disrupt it. Dominion doctrine assumed that enemies would follow predictable rules: target priority, shield frequency, engagement timing. The Terran fleet rejected all of it. In training simulations, Dominion ships targeted heat signatures and core emissions. The Terran ships were modified to project decoys, mask their drives behind local radiation, and fire in irregular cycles. Every weapon was fired not when ready, but when it would confuse. There were no fleet markers, no active beacons, no honor codes. This was not a navy. It was a weapon. Every ship, every crew member, every decision had been shaped by one lesson: survive first, then strike. The Zorkin fleet entered firing range in standard wedge formation, assuming immediate compliance, or quick annihilation. Weapons charged in staggered sequence, scanning for shield harmonics or energy flux that would indicate a panic response. None came. The Terran ships held position, each behind small environmental covers: asteroids, plasma fog, unstable magnetic fields. Dominion AI logged this as inefficient cover. Tactical processors predicted minimal resistance, sub-minute victory. The lead Dominion warship opened fire. Plasma lances arced through space, aimed at the nearest human vessel, a medium-sized frigate with no visible shield generators. The shot missed, not because of error, but because the ship wasn't where it had appeared seconds earlier. Dominion guidance systems recalibrated, factoring in a brief optical glitch. Another volley followed, now wider, directed at multiple targets. Again, no confirmed impact. 3 seconds later, a Terran rail slug punctured the rear flank of the second Zorkan vessel. No energy buildup had been detected prior to the shot. The projectile had traveled through a gravitational curve around a nearby planetoid, effectively hiding its trajectory. Internal containment on the Dominion ship failed. The vessel spun and split, scattering debris. Zorkan officers demanded recalibration. Dominion AI flagged the railgun as obsolete technology, yet the damage was undeniable. A second Terran ship, smaller, faster, fired a burst of high-velocity projectiles. They weren't guided. They didn't need to be. Each one was aimed manually, assisted only by predictive kinetic mapping based on prior Dominion formation patterns. 3 more Dominion fighters exploded. Dominion formations began to falter. Flight commanders issued corrections, but lag time between command and execution allowed the human fleet to strike again. They weren't targeting the strongest ships. They were disabling engines, punching holes through hull integrity points that wouldn't trigger energy alarms. Subtle, precise strikes, not to destroy, but to dismantle. Terran vessels maintained distance. They never charged. They let the Dominion come to them. As the Zorkan ships pressed forward, their positioning grew erratic. Several ships drifted too close to debris clusters. One such cluster detonated, a chain reaction from magnetic mines seeded hours before the Dominion's arrival. Each mine was disguised as space scrap, undetectable by standard sensors. As Dominion ships began splitting into smaller strike groups, their coordination eroded. Their centralized battle AI couldn't compensate fast enough for the human fleet's erratic pattern. The Terran ships never responded directly to aggression. They acted off timing, always one step outside expected behavior. When Dominion ships pursued, they found themselves isolated. When they retreated, Terran ships herded them toward previously mapped kill zones. One Zorkan captain ordered a retreat to higher orbit for tactical repositioning. His ship never made it. A Terran scout ship triggered an energy flare near a dormant microstar, temporarily blinding the Dominion sensors. The capital ship collided with a cloaked Terran decoy drone, laced with reactive explosives. The resulting detonation split the entire midsection of the Zorkan fleet's left flank. Command logs showed confusion. None of the human ships matched any known military class. Their weapons had no consistent output. Their strategies didn't follow standard escalation logic. Zorkan analysts began to report the same message across all channels: unknown tactical pattern, full battlefield adaptation, loss of fleet cohesion. The human ships still hadn't broadcast any signals. In one corner of the battle grid, a lone Dominion interceptor was surrounded. It initiated self-defense protocols, launched all countermeasures, and fired blindly into local space. No hits registered. 30 seconds later, its systems crashed. No weapon impact. Just full-spectrum jamming targeted at the ship's internal electronics, broadcast from a Terran vessel flying cold, silent, without active power signatures. By the time Dominion Central Command attempted to issue new orders, 4 capital ships were disabled. 2 more had already begun emergency warp retreats. The fleet was no longer advancing, it was fragmenting. And still, the Terran fleet hadn't moved forward. They stayed where they were, taking apart their attackers without rush, without fear, and without error. Dominion Command attempted to regain control by splitting its fleet into autonomous nodes, removing reliance on centralized AI. The plan backfired. Each unit moved independently, without shared updates, falling into overlapping fire zones. The Terran fleet adapted immediately. Their targeting systems, pre-programmed with anticipated responses, adjusted trajectories before the split even completed. One Dominion node was wiped out in less than a minute, its ships funneled into a debris field seeded with kinetic traps. Terran vessels began cycling their emissions to mimic damaged profiles. Zorkan scans marked these as crippled targets. Pursuit groups closed in, expecting easy kills. As they entered range, the human ships reactivated full thrust, flipping orientation and firing reverse salvos at exact weak points identified earlier. Every shot had been pre-calculated and pre-positioned. By the time Dominion weapons locked, they had already lost formation. The Carrot 9 deployed an overcharged shield burst timed with a reflective pulse from a nearby gas cloud. The pulse blinded 5 Zorkan sensors and jammed local targeting. 3 enemy ships collided while trying to reposition. The human fleet exploited the moment instantly, launching timed projectile waves from 2 angles, disabling core thrusters and communication arrays. Admiral Rythe issued a single directive across a compressed channel: isolate command. The Terrans shifted fire to ships coordinating fleet responses. They ignored the escorts. They didn't chase kill counts, they eliminated structure. One Dominion flagship, still largely undamaged, was rendered useless after 3 relay vessels were destroyed around it. No commands could reach its fleet. It stood paralyzed in open space, surrounded, with no targeting data. In the upper orbit path, Terran scouts deployed microdrones into nearby dust rings. The drones generated interference pulses mimicking low-grade Terran signal leaks. Zorkan intercept teams followed, assuming intelligence value. Inside the field, proximity charges and motion-triggered shrapnel swarms activated, shredding pursuit wings in seconds. Survivors emerged with disabled drives and shattered sensors, drifting helplessly into planetary gravity wells. Dominion engineers on board tried to adapt by shifting shield harmonics every few seconds to counter kinetic impacts. The adjustments slowed energy transfer across their systems. Human crews noticed immediately. Their ships altered projectile spread to exploit the cooldown window between frequency shifts. Penetration increased by 20%. No announcement. No recalibration period. Just response. A Zorkan battleship initiated a full energy sweep to flush out hidden Terran assets. Before the wave activated, it was struck by a repurposed industrial tug ship carrying a volatile fusion canister. No guidance. No AI. Just a dead vessel pushed silently into range hours before the battle began. It detonated mid-sweep, fracturing the ship's spine. Human ECM teams began cycling Dominion protocols back into the fleet's exposed data streams. Dominion ships received false signals, fake fallback orders, phantom reinforcements, fabricated fleet IDs. Some turned their guns on their own allies. Confusion spread across every Dominion frequency. In 2 locations, Dominion vessels fired on Terran decoys layered with Dominion transponders. The Terran fleet didn't need to advance. The Dominion brought themselves into every trap. Even when the Zorkan tried to retreat, fallback paths had already been cut off. Local gravity fields, manipulated through low-yield fusion bursts, distorted expected travel arcs. Navigation systems failed to account for the shifts. At least 6 ships crashed into asteroids or planetary rings. Admiral Rythe ordered no pursuit. Dominion ships that survived were allowed to flee. Terran vessels shifted back into concealment, reabsorbing into the field. No celebration followed. The operation had been executed precisely, without excess, without waste. Every weapon used had a reason. Every maneuver had a purpose. And every survivor on the Dominion side left with the same message: their enemy wasn't desperate. Their enemy was waiting. The first Dominion ship to return carried 27 survivors out of a crew of nearly 2,000. Its hull was breached in 4 places, atmosphere leaking into space, systems flickering with unstable power. No transmission preceded its arrival. The vessel dropped into orbit above a fringe command post, trailing debris and emergency flares. Internal logs showed no command structure intact. Every officer above junior grade was either dead or unresponsive. There was no organized report, just fragments of crew data, corrupted recordings, and partial sensor logs. What Dominion analysts recovered defied standard engagement metrics. No identifiable formation patterns. No consistent energy weapons. The attackers used kinetic strikes, proximity decoys, and precision jamming in unstructured patterns. The battle AI couldn't find a matching combat doctrine in any known database. Fleet Command ran the inputs through simulation software repeatedly. Every outcome produced the same result: Zorkin defeat in under 10 minutes. The model eventually shut itself down after failing to predict human movements beyond the 4th minute. Survivors described Terran ships appearing where they shouldn't be. Predictive systems failed. Heat maps misaligned. Every action was countered before execution. None could explain how. The Dominion's tactical division suspected internal sabotage, but all logs showed no breach. The truth remained: human forces anticipated every move without visibility or communication. They weren't adapting in real time. They had planned for the entire engagement from the start. The High Council met in restricted session. For the first time in recorded history, terms like strategic withdrawal and containment priority were spoken without resistance. The assumption that Terrans were a minor threat had collapsed. Their fleet was not a regional patrol. It was a test run, a limited action strike group. If that was only a fragment of their actual force, the scope of human capability remained unknown. That uncertainty posed more risk than any known hostile civilization. One intercepted human transmission contained a fragment of internal command notation. Translated, it read: Operation complete. Phase line holds. No escalation required. Dominion linguists dissected the tone. There was no mention of victory. No claim of territory. Only confirmation of task completion. The message indicated the humans didn't consider this a full-scale conflict. It was procedural. Surveillance probes launched toward Terran-controlled space returned abnormal readings. In previously unoccupied systems, construction activity had begun. No colonist ships. No announcements. Just industrial-scale buildup on dead worlds, asteroid belts, and moons without atmospheres. Defensive structures were being placed without claim markers. The implication was clear: no negotiation, no declaration, just expansion. Commanders began requesting new classifications for Terran space. Not contested. Not hostile. Unknown. Analysts struggled to define doctrine for further contact. Diplomacy specialists warned against engagement without clearer understanding. Threat assessment divisions updated internal models. Terran fleets were now considered red tier threats, equal to or above any known adversary. In quiet channels, Dominion captains passed private warnings to each other: avoid soul-range sectors. Don't pursue human signals. Do not initiate. The term used across reports was consistent, unpredictable, but internal logs told a deeper truth. It wasn't unpredictability. It was accuracy. The Terrans didn't react randomly. They reacted correctly, every time. One scout vessel observing a Terran outpost captured a visual feed before being detected and forced to retreat. The footage showed no flag, no monument, no broadcast of victory. Just machines working through dust storms, automated factories forging hull plating, weapons, drones. No celebration. No warning. Just preparation. The fleet that had defeated the Dominion wasn't chasing conquest. They had waited for a target to make the first move. And now, Dominion leadership faced a reality they hadn't prepared for. They hadn't encountered a weaker species. They had awakened one that had been preparing all along.